Super 9000's game room.
So apparently it is pretty much Sega's 60th birthday. So I thought I'd talk about the company briefly. Generally the stuff they've been up to from birth to now. Now I sort of question the whole idea of it being Sega's 60th birthday. Essentially, the origin of Sega started in 1940. It started when three American businessmen, Martin Bromley, Irving Bromberg and James Humpert, formed Standard Games in Hawaii. They did this to provide coin-operated amusement machines, including slot machines, to military bases, as they'd increased in size and personnel with the onset of World War II, and this obviously created a demand for entertainment. After the war, they sold Standard Games and then they established another company called Service Games. It had the name Service Games obviously because they focused on serving the military. After the United States government outlawed slot machines in 1951, employees were sent to Tokyo to establish Service Games of Japan. The company then expanded over the next 7 years to include distribution in South Korea, the Philippines, Vietnam. But if you want to look at when the name Sega was first used, as far as I can tell, it was first used in 1954 on a slot machine, the Diamond Star. So if you follow this year certainly wouldn't be Sega's 60th birthday, it would be this 66th birthday. In 1960, two new companies were formed to take over the business activities and assets of Service Games of Japan, and these did so under the name of Sega Inc. I guess it's this date which we are going off when making Sega's 60th birthday now. But, you know, it might be the origin of the company, legally so to speak, but it's not really the start of things. Sega eventually stopped leasing to military bases and moved its focus away from slot machines to coin-operated amusement machines. Basically, it was importing jukeboxes, pinball games, and gun games. And because they were importing a lot of second-hand games that required frequent maintenance, they began constructing replacement guns, flippers, switches, and this sort of started Sega's transition from importer to manufacturer. And it was from this point on that it led to Sega developing their own games. The first game Sega manufactured was a submarine simulator, Periscope, which was released around the world in the late 1960s. It featured light and sound effects which were considered innovative, and it was particularly successful in Japan. It was exported to malls and department stores in Europe and the United States, and it was a really important game. Sega really prospered from the arcade boom of the late 1970s, with their revenues climbing. It was during this period that Sega acquired Gremlin Industries, which manufactured microprocessor-based arcade games. They also got SEGA Bouquet, if I'm saying that right, a coin-op distributor. In the early 1980s, Sega was one of the top 5 arcade game manufacturers active in the United States, and 1979 saw the release of Head On, which introduced the Eat the Dots gameplay Namco later used in Pac-Man. Funny to think that Pac-Man wasn't the first dot eater, isn't it? Sega licensed and released Frogger in 1981, and in 1982, Sega introduced the first game with isometric graphics, Zaxxon. A fall in arcade profits led to Sega's development of a computer, the SC3000. Learning that Nintendo was developing a games-only console, the Famicom, Sega developed its first home video game system, the SG-1000. And this is where Sega's life as the console manufacturer, a lot of us retro gamers know and love, truly started. The console most people will know, though, would be the Sega Mark III, or it's better known here, the Master System, with what they at the time considered futuristic design intended to appeal to Western tastes. The Mark III was released in Japan in October 1985, and despite featuring more powerful hardware than the Famicom in some ways, it was unsuccessful at launch. A large reason for this was the fact that Nintendo required third-party developers to not publish their Famicom games on other consoles. But Sega developed its own games and obtained the rights to ports from other developers, and things slowly started to pick up. In fact, in certain markets, the Master System became the dominant console of the time. It was the Mega Drive, though, when Sega really got rolling. And in particular, it was the launch of Sonic the Hedgehog. Sonic, with his sort of edgy image, appealed to the youth of the day, and it really got the Mega Drive out there, and Sega invested a lot of money and time in really aggressively targeting this as a more adult console, and this actually started them outselling Nintendo. Yeah, Sega didn't really last forever. We all know they went on to have several failures. They expanded on the Mega Drive with the Mega CD and the 32X, which didn't set the world alight the way they hoped. These were followed up by the Saturn, which was apparently difficult to program for, and again didn't really set the world on fire. And then there was the Dreamcast, which was a wonderful machine, which in a lot of ways was very much ahead of its time. The screens in the memory card, online play, it didn't get the attention it deserved. It was the right thing at the wrong time, perhaps. But still, we can all look back on Sega as this wonderful company with a wonderful history. And, you know, the things like their advertising campaign, Sega does what Nintendo don't, and people writing Sega in the snow with piss in the Viz magazine, which was a personal favourite of mine. They had the balls and the attitude to really chase down the market share and try things. And it was very sad to see it come to an end. And there was something so strange when I first started playing Sonic games on a Game Boy Advance and Sega titles like Super Monkey Ball on the GameCube. But I think we can all just be happy that Sega carried on in some form. In fact, one of my favourite games from the Dreamcast, Phantasy Star Online, is now heading to the Xbox One. Apparently you've got to set your console as being American in order to download it, but I can't wait to get on there and have a go. Sega was and always shall be an important part of my life. I remember turning on the Mega Drive, putting in Sonic and hearing that Sega. I remember walking past hydraulically powered arcade machines like Afterburner in the arcade and thinking, wow, this is so amazing as a kid. And there's still that magic to Sega. I can still put on one of their games and just slip away into a world of fantasy. Well, all I can say is, whether it's the proper 60th birthday or not, cheers Sega, many happy returns. This is Kerr9000 signing out. All I can say to everyone is, get on your Mega Drives, play some games and keep on gaming.